Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Christina Tucson. I'm the chair of the Beverly Hills Bar Association's Privacy and Cybersecurity Law section. We have a great panel ahead of us today, and I'm delighted to introduce our speakers, Mark Evans and Tracy Wilkeson. Tracy Wilkeson is a senior managing director at FTI Consulting, and she has more than 20 years of experience spanning cybersecurity, national security, litigation, and complex investigations. As a former federal prosecutor, she previously served as a U.S. attorney for the Central District of California after more than 2 decades as an assistant U.S. attorney, where she oversaw some of the nation's most significant cybercrime, fraud, and public corruption matters. At FTI Consulting, she advises clients on high-stakes cybersecurity challenges, regulatory matters, and complex forensic investigations worldwide. We also have Mark Evans, who is a cybercrimes and fraud detective, a certified fraud examiner, and the founder of Fraud Hero, where he provides training and education to financial institutions, businesses, law enforcement, and senior communities. He has investigated cyber and fraud related crimes and has been in law enforcement for over 13 years. These investigations have included social engineering, ransomware, credit card fraud, money laundering, identity theft, among various other forms of fraud crimes. His investigations have uncovered multiple methodologies used by criminals, as well as many arrests, convictions, and recovery of millions in lost funds and assets. Now, let's get started. So I'm going to open up the panel and introduce our panelists who we're really excited to have here. And we're really, I think this is really an extremely important topic that is really on the minds of so many consumers and businesses these days. I mean, recent reports are showing identity theft losses topping as much as 12.7 billion in 2024. The FTC has talked about having over 1.1 million reports of identity theft, and that's for people who know to report to the FTC's Identity Theft Resource Center. And of course, with the advent of AI, there's lots of opportunity for new and more creative and more sophisticated scams. So I think let's just sort of start out by kind of directing the questions to Mark. In this space, you've been working in the fraud and social engineering space for some time. Can you talk to us about what you do in your current position and the types of matters you work on in your role, as well as what you're doing in your role with Fraud Hero?
No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction too. I'm glad to be here. I want to thank the Beverly Hills Bar Association for having me and inviting me. This is really awesome. But like you said in my career, my intro, I've done more than half my career as a detective in financial crimes and fraud and cybercrimes. I'm based out of Las Vegas, so I've seen in probably every type of fraud and cybercrime fraud you can think of. Whatever happens here stays here. That's not true. So
Not when it comes to fraud, huh?
Not when it comes to fraud. But so I spent more than half my career dealing with just financial crimes and fraud. So I investigated money laundering, embezzlement, identity theft, credit card fraud, check fraud, you name it, I dealt with it. I did that for 6 years. The other 6 years I did training. So I trained casinos, I trained businesses, hotels, you name it. And then I switched over to cybercrimes about a year ago, which is a very good segue because fraud and cybercrimes kind of go hand in hand. And so now what I do with cybercrimes is I investigate things more along the line of cryptocurrency and network intrusions, ransomware, these malware attacks that you're seeing, and a lot of social engineering. So I would say the majority of the cases I get involve some form of social engineering. And so that's on the forefront of my mind all the time.
Fantastic. Tracy, we'll turn it to you. You were formerly a U.S. attorney, and can you talk to us about the issues you saw in your role there related to cyber crimes, those types of issues, and then talk about where you are in your current position?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I also echo Mark's thanks for having us. I'm really excited to be here. So while I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, I was in the cybercrime section for many years, starting in 2011. And we saw a real evolution of cybercrime into something that was incredibly sophisticated and harder to fight. We saw the beginning of the business email compromise, where you're either being hacked or your emails are being spoofed and it's being used to transfer money. We saw the evolution of ransomware and the rise of cybercrime as a means for nation states to steal money, to steal business information, and to influence elections. And so one of our messages to businesses when I was in the cybercrime section was we needed to be a community sharing information like this and protecting each other. Now that I'm at FTI, I consult with companies and attorneys on a wide variety of cyber and privacy matters, anything from how to develop an incident response plan to how to implement privacy plans and response to various regulations like the CCPA and the bulk data rule.
Fantastic. And, I've been seeing some really terrible and sophisticated new sort of identity theft issues that are out there, which I'll talk about in a bit, but including those related to sort of SIM swapping and phone usage. But Mark, I want to turn to you. What are you seeing in terms of social engineering threats and cyber threats? What are the latest what are the latest trends you're seeing amongst criminals? I hate to put criminals in a what is their newest innovation, but I think we all know there are iterations and
Yeah.
innovations that they come up with. What are you seeing on your end in terms of what's new and
A
old,
lot.
new and old?
Yeah,
Go.
a lot. I realized I didn't answer the second part of your question from the first one, so I'm going to get to both of them.
Sure.
And that was with Fraud Hero. So I founded Fraud Hero while I'm still working as a detective. And one of the main reasons I founded Fraud Hero was because as a detective, I would get a crime or I get a scam, and by the time someone reported to me, it was too late. And so I got to a point to where I wanted to do something before the scam happened or before the crime happened. So I founded Fraud Hero with the goal of educating and training businesses, banks, law enforcement, and senior communities based on what I'm seeing because I get to see the entirety of a scam. I get to see it from beginning to end. So I talk to the victim, I talk to the criminals lots of times. I get to talk to the banks and the businesses. So I get to see kind of a full world view of how that works. So with Fraud Hero, I definitely wanted to be able to put that education out to stop the scam before they start. And so, but to answer your question about what am I seeing, it's very interesting because the underlying tactic that criminals use to commit these crimes haven't changed. So think of it in the sense we all know about the Nigerian prince scam, right? Back in the day, you get the email, hey, I have a bunch of money and gold. I need you to help me out. That scam, under the underlying scam, hasn't changed. It's just evolved into more of a technological version of it. So now instead of it being a Nigerian prince scam, now you have the romance scam, or you have the investment scam where someone's saying, "Hey, I made a bunch of money, and I can teach you how to invest in these funds, and all you have to do is send $50,000 worth of crypto to me, and I'll show you how to do this." And the person sends the money, and then all of a sudden they're on a fake platform that this criminal guided them to, and they're depositing more funds just to try to get their money out. And before they realize that they've actually deposited, their life savings, and given it to this criminal, they've lost, 500,000, $1 million, at a time. So the underlying social engineering isn't changing. You're still seeing phishing. You're seeing a lot of more phishing now, which is voice phishing with the phone calls. And when we think about phishing, a lot of people think about AI. I can tell you right now, AI, and when it comes to phishing, they aren't going hand in hand that often. They do happen, but they're just generally calling and pretending to be someone of authority. They're pretending to be a lawyer, the detective, a firefighter, an IT expert, the CEO. They're just taking these positions of authority and they're using that to then make the person believe that, hey, you can trust me, go along with what I'm going to say, and I'm going to show you the way. And that's one of the more detrimental tactics that I'm seeing nowadays.
And I've seen it, the AI piece to go along with that. I've seen where they do the calls, but then they come up with AI related documents to make it seem like it's from a government official. So I saw someone who put together a fake, fake SARS report, suspicious activity report, and told a business person, "You're in trouble. We have this report where you're moving all this money around that you're not supposed to be, and here's our document from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we're in a confidentiality agreement because we're the government." And so I have seen some of the AI piece of it on the back end of it, right? Where they're generating documents that may look more real than they would have before. But it's interesting you're saying it's sort of the same kind of scam and the phone calls and of course the text too, right? Where it's, you get a text and, oh, sorry, I accidentally texted you, and then next thing you know, they confirm you're a real person and go through with that process. So that's really
Yeah,
interesting.
I would say AI is not causing the scams, it's enhancing the scams. Like you said, with the fake document fraud and things like that, people, they were doing that before with Photoshop and
Right.
Microsoft Word. Now they can just do it at scale. So they can create a lot more documents faster. They can make a lot more phone calls faster. They can do a massive amount of text messages in a short amount of time due to using AI and AI agents. So it's just enhanced their ability to commit the scams they were already committing before.
And improve their grammar, right? I mean, we used to see the old,
Yeah.
right? The old scams.
Yeah.
It's like this isn't a really well written, romance letter. We'd be able to tell victims, like, really, this just doesn't really make sense that this person you think is from the U.S. is writing with this kind of grammar or writing in this way, and now, right? They can fix that and make it sound more believable or create a variety of letters, right? It used to be we'd say, oh, look, this letter is going out to 10 people. You can find
Yeah.
it online, and now you can just have AI write another version. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And just to level set, Mark, in terms of what we mean by social engineering, I mean, I think of it as essentially, a fraudulent way that that the bad guy tries to convince somebody else to do something. So like you can commit a crime with a gun in your hand, or you can try to fraudulently convince them to do something. Is that basically it, or how would you define social engineering?
I typically define it as manipulating someone to commit an act that they wouldn't normally do or to give over confidential information that they wouldn't normally turn over.
Right.
And just like you said, is someone using fraud to some degree, they're trying to either gather information or gather money. Those are their two means of two things that they're going after because information is gold nowadays. And if they can just use that information maybe later against someone, maybe against a business, maybe like in a data breach or a ransomware attack, that works. But if they get your personal information or somebody else's personal information, they can use it for themselves or to target somebody else as well.
Yeah.
So those two factors are what they're actually going after.
Tracy, I'll turn it to you. We've talked a bit about individuals, but what are the threats that you think businesses are seeing? I mean, of course, we've got traditional schemes that we'll have you talk about as well, but what kinds of things should businesses really be aware of, including people from their own law firms or their clients, right, that may be listening here? What should people be on the lookout for?
So one of the biggest things right now is mobile malware, which is malicious software that's specifically designed to target smartphones. And it's usually disguised as legitimate apps or links and texts. There even can be sort of walking past you and sending it to your phone. And this is a sort of insidious attack on these phones because when you think about all of the information that you share on your phones, it gets at all of the things that Mark was talking about them wanting. And they're using it specifically to target businesses and CEOs, particularly in this time when there have been attacks on CEOs. They're going after these people. And frankly, even nation states are using
Mhm.
it to find out more about what businesses are doing here in the United States. Maybe they don't do anything. They're not stealing your bank account. They're just watching your business emails and learning about how things are done in the United States. And so that is one of the biggest things that we're seeing. We're seeing issues with respect to BYOD or bring your own device policies or lack thereof, where businesses are allowing their employees to access their network or anything, but basically bring their own device to work and use it to access things. And the issue is that people are not always careful when it comes to clicking on links or what they're surfing on their own computers. And so there's a much greater likelihood of malware making it through to the system. And then just, I guess a little bit of the same, which is sort of not planning enough for cyber events. And obviously, as you guys have been talking about, the weaponization of AI to increase the sophistication and an ability to attack, right? I think that, in a long, far away universe, you could only commit cyber attacks if you were a fairly technical person who could write code. And then we had, what they called the script kiddies, who would sort of get these little packages of scripts and be able to write it. And then we had, you can go on the dark web and hire yourself a hacker to do these things. And now AI makes it even more widely available. for people to be able to do these attacks. And then in terms of sort of the more traditional things, I mean, to me, I think the human factor is a constant. The need for businesses to train their employees to not click the link, to report when they do. I had a case where there was a woman who worked at a company. She clicked on the link, fine, these things happen. And then her computer started to go all wonky. And she just closed her computer and went home for the day. She was like, I think this is fine. And so the bad actors had a lot more time to get into the system than they otherwise would. And so that training factor, that human factor, is, I think, just a constant that's always going to be there.
Right. And I think it's really important to be really aware of that. I mean, you may see a bounce back of, oh, your email didn't go through to an email address you've never seen. That's a real red flag. Has someone gotten onto your website? Are they on your form? Where you have an inquiry form. Do you have a proper captcha there? So, they can't have bots that are sending out all kinds of emails. Do you have your security on your website set up properly so that people aren't able to get in and maneuver through your website? I mean, it's not something everybody thinks of, right? In terms of, it's like, oh, I have a contact form on my website, that should be fine. And there are ways in which people can then be sending out malware pretending to be you, right? And I think that becomes a real issue is, I have someone whose account must have been compromised a long time ago, and I still get, I mean, it's been years. I continue to get, spam emails from all different permutations of that. So I think that's really important. And I think the other point you touched upon is, when they're watching businesses, one of the things I've seen before is through the business email compromise. Now they're in the CEO's email system. I've seen them send an email saying, oh, we need to transfer $100,000 to, client X because they need a refund, and I'm going to be, and it's when the person's on a plane because they know when the CEO's what the calendar is, and it's got to be done urgently while I'm gone. And next thing somebody's like, well, the CEO wants me to wire this money out. And the money gets wired out. And then with wires, obviously, it's very difficult to undo those because banks are supposed to honor those within the 24 to 48-hour period. So their job is to send the money out. And there's a real, I think, challenge that I've seen with that, where banks aren't necessarily requiring the name on the wire to match the account number. So it's like you think you're sending it to ABC escrow or to your client, and it's not, it's somebody else's, some fraudster's account number. So I think those are really important things to think about.
I totally agree. And it's leading to increasing amounts of litigation, right? Because when that happens, there are two aggrieved parties who are out money, right? Both the person sending it and the person that's supposed to be receiving it. And so now there's going to be litigation as to who is it that was, hacked? Was it you that was hacked? Was it me that was hacked? Where is this coming from? And it becomes quite costly beyond just the cost of the lost money.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that too about the who and where. And I'll tell you right now, I'll probably deal with a fraudulent wire transfer or BEC at least once a week. And a lot of times it's not, and you mentioned earlier with the human factor, the way people are getting in, these criminals are getting in, is because hacking a human, which is what I define as social engineering, hacking a human is a lot easier than hacking a computer. So these threat actors or bad actors are sitting inside someone's email, whether it be the CEO, the accountant, or whoever's in charge of the funds, or maybe the client's email, and they're just waiting to see when that invoice is supposed to come through. And now they know, like, okay, here's the invoice number. I'm going to send it. I'm going to replicate it. I'm going to change the account number on it. And then it's going to go whoever, whether the CEO or the business is on the hook for it or the client's on the hook for it. And like you said with the litigation, you're going to have both sides fighting over who's the one who got compromised. So the business is going to wonder, is the client who's the one who was compromised, and did we send the wrong information or money to the wrong person because the client was compromised? And the client's wondering, well, I checked my stuff. Is the business compromised? And now are they at a loss because the business didn't handle their cybersecurity or take it seriously? And now someone's at a loss at a lot of money. I've seen money go out the window very quickly. But I've seen money come back too. I will say that depending on how fast someone reports it, that's where reporting is very important. Money money can be brought back as well, like within that 24 to 48-hour period that you were talking about, Christina. So it's very important that people understand both sides of those. And like I said, I'm not an attorney, but I have seen the lawsuits come out and
Right.
how bad it gets between client and business.
Yep.
And Mark, you talked about reporting. I think it's a really important thing. I think most people don't know who the right people are to report to, right? I mean, there's reports like
Yeah.
submitting something to the FTC that's not going to get you an immediate response, important, but what would you recommend in terms of the all of the agencies that one might want to reach out to, and who should they call first, and what would you recommend if someone's got one of those terrible wires that goes out, then they realize shouldn't?
And I always have three that you just report to right away as soon as you find out. The first one is your bank. If you have money go out, I use the analogy, if you had a busted pipe in your house and the water is just shooting everywhere, what's the first thing you're going to do? And I've had people go, oh, I'm going to call the plumber. No, you're going to shut the water off to the house. So
Yeah.
you want to call the bank is the water to your house. Call them and say, look, stop the money from flowing out. Shut down the account, freeze it, lock it, make sure I don't lose any more money. Then you want to contact your law enforcement, and that's going to be your plumber, right? So you want to contact the FBI, ic3.gov. If it's especially if it's a wire transfer, ic3.gov is the first place you should go to because they're going to get it immediately. I have seen those reports myself. I've gotten those reports within a matter of 15 minutes. I've actually recovered $400,000 for somebody in a matter of 20 minutes of them losing it. So the faster somebody reports it, the quicker it, or the better it is for us to try to get that money back. And then you also want to report it to your local law enforcement. Those are the big three, because sometimes you may have an insurance claim that you have coming down the line, and some insurance companies want you to have both the IC3 report, because that's self-reporting, but they want you to have the local police report to show that you actually went in, filed a legitimate report, and it's going to get looked at. So I'll be honest, not every report you file to the FBI is going to be looked at, depending on different circumstances, depending on how much manpower they have to look at the cases, what the amount is, what their threshold is. But local law enforcement, at least you can say, hey, someone's going to look at it at a minimum at least, and you have two different report numbers to say, look, this is very serious. I filed a report with both these, and you can give those to the bank to let them know you're serious about, hey, this is not first party fraud. I'm actually a victim of fraud, and I'm trying to do what I can to try to get my money back and report it properly. So those three are the first ones I always say. Everything else afterwards, you can take time, with those first three within those first 24 hours are very important.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll say that here in LA, the FBI has a great task force with a great kill chain for these kinds of BC matters. And so reaching out to them and the local law enforcement will activate this group. And they've been really pretty successful at stopping when they get it in time.
Yeah. I've sent those kill chains myself, so I completely understand. It's very quick. All you have to do, as long as you have the account information. If you were a victim, send the account where it came from, the account that it went to. That's an email that goes out. The FBI has their kill chain process that they do it, and you can get money back within a matter of 15, 20 minutes sometimes. So if the funds are still there, you can get that money back.
And you can also call them if you're feeling really desperate too. In addition to IC3, in LA at least somebody tends to answer the phone typically. So
And
that's
just to capture a question that just came in. What we're saying is letter I,
Oh.
C3.com. IC3.com.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
FBI's
.gov,
website.
.gov.
Or .gov. Sorry, you're right. IC3.gov. I'll put it in the chat.
I think we have a link to it too in our materials, Mark. I think we may have one.
Yeah, I think I saw it in there, so it is in there.
Yeah, it should be in the materials as well. But yeah, that's the FBI's online resource for reporting for crime. And then of course there's the FTC as well. But again, for a wire sort of quick moving, IC3, letter IC, I don't know what it stands for actually. Internet
Yeah.
crime, maybe three.
It's Internet Crimes Complaint Center. So I and C is like three. So Internet Crimes Complaint Center.gov. So IC3.gov, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the three for the three C's. Okay, great.
Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. And then, and Tracy, do you have other things with respect to businesses when they're looking at a breach in terms of reporting, what you suggest people do, or is it sort of the standard protocol? Call someone like you if it's a data breach type thing, or what would you suggest in that way?
Yeah, I mean, Mark's got it spot on in terms of the order of things. The fourth and the fifth calls usually are to your insurance company if you've got cyber insurance, and then to a remediator. And so FTI has an incident response team. There are many others. But someone who you were hired, like, obviously you report the crime, you want the law enforcement to look into it, but they're going to make their own decisions about what they want to investigate and what they think is appropriate. You can also hire a remediator who can come in, find out what's going on, investigate your systems, get the bad guys out, and make sure that you're clean, and then work with you to develop your system so that they're a little bit more hardy in the going forward way.
That's great. That's really helpful. Yeah, and in talking about the mobile scam, it's come to my attention lately, and something that I was not as familiar with, but well, I'd heard about it from my FBI contacts before, but the SIM swapping and the porting issues, and so I've recently come to learn about pretty serious SIM swapping and porting issues that people may not be as aware of in terms of things they can do. So SIM swapping is basically somebody essentially taking over your phone and transferring your number and information to a new phone. And so it's what you do if you want to go get a new phone at your local mobile provider, right? You say, oh, change the SIM to this great new phone I'm getting. But the problem is if a criminal gets your information and they're able to use that data to pretend to be you, SIM swap your phone number to another number. Now they have your data for two-factor authentication. I've seen them get into people's credit reports, being able to pretend to be them, so much so that the people themselves it's very difficult for them to undo it. The other thing that's done is porting, illegal porting, where they take your number not just within your own carrier, but they take it to yet another carrier. So you're at a Verizon or a T-Mobile, and they switch you to an AT&T or somebody else, and then next thing you know, your phone number is not even with your carrier anymore. It's now in some other mysterious location that you don't know about. And they may buy some other equipment while they're at it, while they're pretending to be you. And that puts people in a really tough position. And what I've recently learned and want to share with the audience is that you can do things now to protect that from happening. You can, on your phone itself, lock your SIM under your settings, and you can also call your carrier and lock all of your phones from being ported without either a special password or use of your use of a website or something else, an app that they have to do it. So just wanted to pass that along, just as something that I think is a real issue, because what flows from this theft of your cell phone is so many other things, right? Because they've got your data point, now they've got your two-factor, and now when you try to reach out and prove who you are to lock your credit, they're saying, well, you don't have the number for two-factor authentication, and so we're not going to give it to you. And I've even seen the criminals put fraud locks on themselves with their own passcode so that the person can, then they unlock it when they want to steal more things,
Yeah.
and the person can't do anything with it, right? So I don't know, Mark, if you got comments on that in terms of what you've seen, but the SIM swapping and the phone theft, I think is a pretty serious issue, especially since some people rely so much on their phone these days, and the idea that you can lock those things, and the SIM lock also keeps someone from putting a new SIM onto your phone, which is a thing they can also do, right? They can connect a number to your phone, that kind of
Yeah.
thing Tracy was talking about. But Mark, do you have thoughts on kind of some of the mobile fraud and things that you're seeing?
How much time we got? So,
Yeah.
uh, so I
14
have,
hours, get started.
I think you're touching on, like, I'm going to touch on the SIM swaps, but I think you're touching on a much bigger underlying issue is protecting your personal information in your devices not only protects you, but it also protects your business. Because if I can get access to you, if I'm a bad actor and I can get your information and I cannot pretend to be you, if you're a CEO or some high-ranking executive, or not even high-ranking, just if you work at a business and now I can pretend to get your device, I can take your personal information, your name, date of birth, social address, and then go into a phone company store, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and swap your phone, and now I have access to your two-factor authentication. Now, if I know enough about you, which our information is everywhere, data broker websites, LinkedIn, all these other things, I now know you probably access certain systems when you work. So now I can reset your information, whether you're working for a major corporation or a smaller law firm. It could be Now I know how to get into that system. I can pretend to be you, depending on the privileges that you have within that system. I can escalate those privileges. Maybe now I use that for ransomware. Maybe I take all your information, I lock it, and now I'm saying, well, if you want the information back and you don't want me to leak it, you got to pay me this much money. That's what the threat actors are doing. So protecting your personal information is super important. And I'll give you a story about a SIM swap that I actually caught like as it was happening. And there was an individual who didn't even live within where I worked at. He lived in Florida. And he was out on a boat that day. But when he got back off the boat, he was on the boat and he wasn't getting any phone calls or text messages. So he just thought maybe I don't have a signal because I'm out on the water. So when he got back, his phone still wasn't ringing, he wasn't getting messages. And he goes, well, this is kind of not normal. And so he tries to make a phone call and realizes his phone's not working. So then he calls a phone company and says, oh no, your phone number was switched. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And they tell him where it was happening at. And he's like, oh, it's happening in Las Vegas. So we actually were able to get a hold of the phone company and let us know like what's going on. As he's doing this, he tries to access his bank account. He realizes someone is actively trying to withdraw funds at a physical branch. So we were able to go out there to the physical branch and catch this guy in person who had done the SIM swap and was actively trying to get funds out of his account. That was a nice run we had that day through a parking lot, but
Yeah.
uh but that importance of protecting his information and putting those security plans in place as far as protecting his SIM would have stopped someone from trying to access his account. It would have stopped someone from accessing his email account if he has two-factor authentication for his email accounts. So SIM swaps can be very dangerous, but that information that they get to even do the SIM swap in the first place is openly available on data broker websites. And there's hundreds of data broker websites. And now people can go in there and remove the information themselves. It's tedious, or there's companies that do it, but there is this overarching thing that's this umbrella you're talking about. When you're saying like, hey, look, protecting yourself protects more than just yourself. And that's I'll leave it at that. I think that's the best way to put it.
Well, and for people who don't realize how much information is out there, and not everybody loves to Google themselves, but it's a good idea to see when you type in your name, is your home address, your all of your personal data, your family information, is all that, are all those things coming up? Because those are things criminals will use. Or, your mother's maiden name, people think that's
Mhm.
such a great thing. Well, that's pretty commonly available, right? So it's like, for all the criminals out there, my mother's maiden name is not my mother's maiden name on any of my stuff. It's something else, right? Like, people feel like you have to answer that question. It's like the answer is the answer you will remember. It can be whatever you want it to be. It's like, what's the color of your first car? Well, there's only so many colors. So maybe don't pick one of those colors, pick something else. So, I mean, I think people sometimes are just, sort of following along thinking this is not something people can find, but you could spend just a few minutes and even go to AI and see what comes up about you, right? I mean, there's a lot of
Oh yeah.
information out there, right? That is easy for criminals to get and pretend to be you and to go into the bank and figure that out.
Yeah,
In
no, I agree.
I'm
Yeah. I mean, I'm a
curious,
public
Mark,
facing person, but
in that case, had they already put together an ID for the person that they had hacked the phone for? Do they have
oh
any?
yeah. So, and it's not just like it happens quickly. They plan it out. So I've seen them. They'll make the fake ID. They'll make the fake documents before they execute the plan. So it's not, hey, I got your information right now. I'm going to go use it right away. It's like, okay, I got the information. I'm going to sit and wait. I'm going to make a fake ID with your address on it. Oh, you live in Florida? I'm going to make a Florida ID. Oh, I went to a data broker website. Now I have your name, date of birth, address, all that information. I can put all that on there. They're going to study it so they remember it. And so when they get questioned on it, they're going to go, oh, no, this is me. I live at this address and I've lived here before. And yeah, my birthday is this day. And I've seen some really good fake IDs. I've seen some to the point where I questioned whether how good I was. I'm like, this guy is making some really good fake IDs. But um, but I've seen like really scammers are getting better. Like I said, AI enhances it. So they're getting better with the use of utilizing tools. Now we can use those same tools to help us get better at stopping them as well. So at the same time, while they're like, hey, I'm going to use ChatGPT and Gemini to create all this stuff, it's like, okay, great. I can use the same tools to find you too. Um, So it's a give and take with both, but it's just protecting your information is very important.
Absolutely. Tracy, do you have thoughts on that from a business perspective, just sort of generally, or steps you think businesses could look at taking to help protect themselves other than what we've been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is so critical for businesses and law firms and anybody who has data to make sure that their plans for when a cybersecurity event happens are regularly updated and tested. You can't just have the policy
Yes.
and never try it out. You've got to test it. Tabletops can be, which are sort of exercises where you work with, you can either do it internally or you can hire someone like FTI to help you put it together, where we come up with a scenario. Maybe it's ransomware, maybe it's an insider threat, whatever, and then run through what's the plan say is happening. What do we do this? And then what happens next? And what if this other thing happens? It can be so enormously helpful because, as has been often said, no plan survives first contact with with the enemy. And you don't want to find that out when the real thing is happening. And there's so many decisions that have to be thought through. Like, who is in charge? Who is the decision maker? There's a lot of people that think it's them. And if you don't make sure that you have it, and then what if that person's not around? Or if there's someone in our system, what are we going to do in terms of off-channel communications so that we're not communicating in a way that the bad guy can see? Or will we pay ransomware? Or will we pay ransom, right? Like, these are not the kinds of decisions that can be made in the moment at the time of the actual bad thing. Do we have the logging capabilities on our systems so that we will know whether or not our data has been exfiltrated? There are so many regulators that require you to report if things have been taken, but not if they haven't. And if you don't have the ability to know, you're going to be stuck reporting. And so having this ability to know what's going on with your systems. And frankly, now with the rise of so many regulations about cybersecurity and privacy and advocating for consumers as they should, if these things aren't in place, you're not only going to suffer the harm of the incident to your company, but there's going to be even more consequences because you're going to be liable under these regulations to these regulators, and frankly, to your consumers who are going to come along, or your clients who are going to come along and file litigation against you for not having the security that you needed. And so it can seem really expensive to plan for these events and to get these policies in place and do but it is nothing that compares to what the costs are when the event actually happens. And so that is my foot stomping encouragement of people to take the time to look at their plans and make sure that they are up to date and tested.
That's great. And one of the things we used to also say when I was at the FTC was we would encourage businesses to not keep more data than they need, right? In addition to having a good backup plan, just because you had it doesn't mean you should be keeping it forever. I mean, I got a data breach notice from a company that I probably haven't interacted with for 20 years. Why do they still have my data, right? There's no reason why they would keep that. And it's not something where I had an active account or anything. But it's like now I'm getting a notice that you have data from 20 years ago. And so, I mean, I think whether you agree, but it's important to just make sure that the companies are, as you said, you've got to report what went out. So first of all, you have to know what you have, and then you have to
Yeah.
know what went out, and then you have to know whose data went out, right? And all of those things being having a good sense of what your data flow is, and having policies about not keeping things longer than you need to, or not taking extra stuff you don't need to take in the first place, right? You don't need certain data. Companies probably shouldn't bring it in.
And and again, there's not only the real world cost of having lost the data, there's the cost of having to fix the problem. So we get brought in a lot when a lot of data has been taken, and now you're paying me to go into your systems, pull out all the stuff that was taken, run it through programs to figure out, what countries do we need to report to? What regulators do we need to report to? And and you cannot believe the number of times that so much of the data never needed to be kept. And so now there's this huge tranche of data that you're paying me to go through that you didn't need to keep in the first place. And so I underscore that.
Right. No,
Yeah, I've always seen that people don't care about fraud and scams until they're a victim of fraud and scams. Like
Yeah.
it's like, okay, if you just prevented the preventative measure in the first place, you wouldn't have gotten scammed or defrauded in the first place, and you save yourself sometimes millions of dollars. If you'd have
right.
just paid someone like FTI to come in and go, hey, you know what, we're here, we can show you what you need, or you pay someone to come in, do education and training like I do, and go, hey, look, your employees, the way they're getting into your system is not they hack your computer, they hack your employee. So it's just those mitigation tools that you have in place to say, hey, look, you know what, maybe we should actually invest in stopping the scam or stopping the fraud or stopping the intrusion before we actually have an issue in your hand. Now you're dealing with litigation and people leaving. Reputation damage is really huge. So there's a lot of other factors that come into it after the fact.
Right, because once that data goes out, you then now have a whole class of people who are now going to be potential new identity theft victims who are going to come back to you and say, I gave you my data for this particular limited use, and now I'm being targeted for, a variety of identity theft issues.
Yeah.
Um, and I would also add just sort of an old school piece of advice. I've seen most recently, as part of this sort of larger identity theft issue I mentioned earlier with the SIM swaps, is the ordering of lots of merchandise to the person's home. And then, the post office will allow you to get information sent to you about what mail's coming your way, like a scan of the front of your envelopes. And so I've actually seen the criminals set up a situation where they were getting the mail cover information. So they would know when
Hmm.
the items they stole were going to the house so they could go and intercept it before it got to the actual consumer. So, and then it would look to the company like the consumer was part of the scam because the consumers ordered all these things to their house. And so, yes, you did buy, these tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. But this person just knows what day the mail carrier is coming, so they can just go and pick it up. So I would say the old school, secure mailboxes, locking down your credit, right? Having fraud alerts, having all of those things, annualcreditreport.com. You can get that's the government site. You can get your credit reports for free from all three agencies. And now, if you're a fraud victim, you can even check it more frequently. But being at the place where if somebody is opening new accounts in your personal or your business name, right? Because if you're not checking your credit and you don't have any alert system, people can be doing all kinds of things, right? And you won't find out until it's delinquent after a while or something of that nature. And I've seen companies say, well, no, we've decided that we think you are responsible. It's like, but this person didn't make the purchase. And there was a recent case where a woman challenged a fraud on her bank account and they said you took too long. Sorry. And she didn't
Yep.
recognize
Oh,
it.
that's a real thing. Yeah, that happens too. I've seen that.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. They say you don't usually report within the 30 days. Usually it's 30 days, sometimes 60, depending on what it is. But if you don't know, if you're not getting the notifications every single day, which you can put in place for notifications of payments on your bank account or credit cards and debit cards and things like that. But if you're someone who send out like checks, like check fraud is really big. You were mentioning like mail and people doing mail covers. Having informed delivery is free and it's very important. Like if you're still using checks, which I don't think you should be, that's just my personal opinion. I hate checks, but but if you're still using checks, you want to make sure that hey, did it go to the right person? Um, did it actually make it to the mailbox? Especially law firms. I've seen a lot of law firms who are getting their mailboxes broken into every single day because they're getting checks. They were still receiving checks from clients from the cases that they've had. And then the person goes and says, hey, I never received a check. I'm like, well, we put it in the mailbox. Well, it was stolen. It was cash, but not by the person you intended it to be cashed by. So that's a whole nother story or another panel.
Washing is a whole other thing. I mean, that was,
Yeah.
back when I was in law school 100 years ago, that was one of the criminal cases where someone was getting sentenced where she was literally going around and taking the checks out of the mailboxes and, washing them and putting another name on them. And it's still happening. But and even people putting stuff in the post office boxes that are outside, right? That's not secure either. I mean, people can,
Mm.
can easily break into those. I just saw someone posting this was trying to actually steal the whole mailbox. I mean, these are like, I mean, it's pretty bold what people do
Oh
these
no,
days.
I've seen the whole mailbox. I've actually gone to a bad actor's house and they had the mailbox on the wall like it was a trophy. Um, So, so yeah, it
That's
happens all
awesome.
the time. Like that one shocked me, but yeah, that one literally they like, oh yeah, well I had a girl who she was addicted to stealing mail. She told me she had dreams about stealing mail every single day. So it's pretty bad. But like I said, that's a whole nother webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what, what kinds of advice can we give people, or even just sort of a larger question is, are there things we think that can be done in a larger way to kind of help protect? We've talked about a lot of things so far, but are there other things we can think of we want to sort of have people look out for? I mean, we've talked a lot about just being aware, being cautious, doing trainings for your staff. Maybe Mark, what do you see as some of the kind of red alerts or things people might not be paying attention to, or sort of your top tips for that, maybe stuff we haven't talked about already about how to protect themselves or their businesses?
Yeah, I think of the big, especially since we're talking about social engineering for the most part in AI, I have a phrase that I use and I tell people to pause, think, and verify. And what is a three-step method for you to actually make sure that you're not being a victim or you're not being socially engineered? And I tell people to pause. So sometimes we get those random requests, that text message, that phone call, that email, and it's some kind of hook that they have in there. Hey, you have fraud in your account. Sorry, I missed your call. Hey, I have to send this invoice. Take a second and just breathe because they're trying to create urgency. They're going to say, hey, we want it right now. And so we take that second to pause and just think about what is actually being requested of me right now. Why are they asking me to do this right now? Why my CEO has never asked me to do this way before? Why now? When's the last time I talked to the CEO? Um, have I checked my bank account to see if there's actual fraud in the account without clicking the link that they send you? So think about all these different things that should normally run through your mind. Start training yourself to run those through your mind, and then verify who you're talking to. Are you actually talking to your CEO? Maybe text them and call them and make sure that did you really send me this email requesting a $500,000 transfer? I'm pretty sure they're not going to be upset that you verified before you sent off $500,000. Verify if you're talking to the bank. Like, is this actually a bank rep? Because you can spoof a phone number. That's part of social engineering. Technology is free. I can make whatever number I want show up on the phone. So, and criminals have used that technology to the fullest. That's why we get spam calls all the time. I've gotten a phone call from myself before. That was the weirdest thing. My own name popped up. That was very interesting. That was some years ago, but I learned how to remove all my information from the internet. Now I'm more public facing, so my stuff's out there. But I know how to find people, so if they want to come after me, let's have some fun. But um, but yeah, so and verify who you're talking. Is it the bank? Is it the CEO? Is it your
Yeah.
fellow employee? Is it your client? Verify who you're talking to. And then once you put all that into place, then make your decision and do what you're going to do.
Yeah. It's the know your customer, just more of
Hmm.
it.
Right.
Yep.
And I think it's really important. I mean, it's just, in fact, I just got an email earlier today from someone I know. It's like, here's an Adobe document for you to open. This is not a person I know this person. They're another lawyer, but it's not somebody who normally sends me any documents. We don't have any reason to be sharing documents. And there was some incorrect grammar in the heading, but like somebody else is like, oh, it's a document from an attorney I know. I should probably click on it. And I'm about to give him a call and tell him he better check his email to see if it's there, right? Because that's the other piece is, if you're compromised, look in your sent box, look in your trash, see if you're finding things that somebody is sending out through your email that you don't know about, right?
Hmm.
Use two-factor when you can, and any other, don't have easy passwords. It's easy to want to use the same password over and over again, but we used to say the longer passwords are stronger, and it can be a couple of sentences you put together, right? Or a full sentence
Yeah.
you remember that's got some letters and numbers and symbols mixed into it. But again, the brute force attacks, right? They can just these days can try a lot of different combinations if you don't have a system that locks people out, which companies should definitely do. That was a
Yeah.
case back when I was in the FTC where they didn't have that. And they let people try as many times as they want. And in that particular case, they got into one location. And then the other thing was if companies have multiple locations, we would always say, don't tie things together such that your desk clerk at a hotel in Ohio has access to the entirety of your whole
Yeah.
nationwide system, right? I mean, that's a real problem. People should only have access to the things that they actually need. And so I think another thing about making sure you know your data, as Tracy was talking about, is making sure people only have access to what they need. So if someone gets breached, and somebody has to come in and look at it, they can say, oh, well, she got breached, but she only has access to this one subfolder. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but this is the level of what she has, as opposed to, oh, this employee got breached and now our entire system of data that she really didn't need to be accessing anyway is entirely breached. So I think those are things for people to kind of think about as they're working with data and thinking that part of it through. Um, sorry, Mark, you were giving advice. Other advice you have on that, or Tracy, in terms of protecting people and kind of what companies should think about, or any other good war stories? Mark, I like the mailbox war story. I don't know if you have any other cautionary tales for
Awesome.
people about kind of all of these issues.
I
Well, the
got
one
lots of
thing
war
that
stories, but I'll let Tracy go. Tracy go and since you mentioned that.
the one thing I wanted to talk about here is I think that there's been a real evolution of thought about um, regarding whose responsibility the cybersecurity of the business is. I think a lot of people, a lot of times lawyers like to say, I don't know anything about it. That's the IT guy's thing. That's the CISO's thing. That's over there. And I don't need to concern myself with whether or not it's good. And I think that there's been a real evolution of thought, appropriately so, that frankly, everyone in the company has skin in the game. The CEO, the CFO, even small companies. There's a lot of skin in the game on this, whether it's because of the regulators saying that you do and you're going to be held responsible, or whether
Yeah.
it's because of the lawsuits from clients and customers and things like that. And so that if you're not in that headspace, I would say get to that headspace. You do have skin in the game. Make sure that you're aware of what data you have and how it's being properly protected, so that you know.
Great. Mark, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was looking at some of these questions on the side of it. I mean, I got a bunch of war stories. I see all these questions are coming in.
Yeah, we can
Um,
jump on the questions. One of the questions is, how do you deal with having a plethora of different emails from multiple accounts and remembering them when needed?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want something, you can have email forwarding. So if you have multiple accounts, or use a password manager. So if you mean like logging, as far as like using a bunch of different databases, having a password manager is awesome. I use a password manager to keep all my emails in place. I'm a cybercrime detective, so I'm probably more paranoid than the average person. But I use a lot of like email aliases because I know if something's breached, I can tie that email to that specific company and I know exactly what happened. But that gets forwarded to my main email that I'm going to be using. So, but having a password manager in case you want to, remember all the passwords, you can use it. There's a bunch of different companies out there that do that. I use Proton, for myself, but there's Proton, there's I think LastPass, First Password. There's a bunch of different ones that are out there. But I think that's a really good way to do it and use one master password that doesn't access anything else. Don't use Microsoft or Google's like browser password manager, please, because that can be breached and someone can get access to your information. So if you have a third party one to use, I think that's really good for having all those different emails.
Right.
I
I
hope
think
I answered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you did. There's another comment. I delete all texts and emails if it has a link or attachment from someone I have no reason to receive. Do you see any problem with just deleting? My thought, if it's legitimate, they will get a hold of me another way.
That seems fine.
Right. And I
Well,
think there
Yeah.
are some companies that also like with cell phone companies, I think they will also allow you the option to forward it. Like a lot of companies will have an option to forward spam or mark it as phishing or to do it in that way. So I think if there's that option to mark it and delete, and when you mark it phishing, they'll often delete it as well. So sometimes that can also just sort of help others in the larger way of a company's identifying it. I always immediately block, and I not only just delete, I block stuff. And so I don't want to jinx it, but it does seem to I don't seem to be people's favorite target anymore because I pretty quickly am flagging their stuff. And so I don't think they love they have to get a new number because it keeps getting flagged. So I would
Yeah.
say, if you have a phishing option or an option to mark it as spam, that's always a good way too. And then yeah, delete it. People will typically find you if it's really important. I agree. Or if it's someone like reach out to them. Like the email I got, I'm about 99% sure it's not accurate, but I'm going to reach out to the person, and if there really was something, then then he'll resend it to me.
Yep.
Um,
Verify who you're talking to.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I got a war story I can give you if you want it. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
please,
I think it will to kind of sum this up.
we'll
And this is
do.
a case that I had about a year ago. And this involves a business email compromise, but it shows the importance of protecting your devices and your personal information. So there was a business who was he had a vendor, or this business had a vendor that was out of state. They were doing a project out of state. And this vendor was in charge of all the invoicing for all the contracting and everything they were doing out there in the other state. But this vendor who was in charge of that connected to a public Wi-Fi, and he didn't use a VPN. He logged into his email address, and what ended up happening was he logged into a bad Wi-Fi that belonged to a criminal actor, and that person was just in his email. And what ended up happening was when it was time to send an invoice, this person sent a legitimate invoice or an invoice from a legitimate email because he was actually logged into the vendor's account. So when the email came through to the business, it came from a legitimate person. It looks real. And this is where following policies and having policies in place and following them make a lot of sense. And the reason is when that invoice came in, the accountant who was in charge for that part then sent it off to be verified. They didn't send it off for payment, sent it off to be verified. And then that person was supposed to verify it and then make the payment. They didn't verify that it came from him. They never contacted him, and they just sent the payment off. And it was about $435,000.
Wow.
That money went out. Luckily, they called it very fast. Now, this is where we talked about reporting and the kill chain process and the hold harmless process. I don't think we mentioned that, but how to get that money back. And what ended up happening was because they reported it so fast, I was able to send off the kill chain, able to contact the bank, and then they were able to send back the money that wasn't withdrawn yet, which was about 80% of the money. So they still got back most of the money, but it goes to show the importance of protecting your personal information, protecting your devices, having policies and procedures in place, and following those policies and procedures, and verify who you're speaking with before you send off any kind of transaction.
And
So,
also never using public Wi-Fi. People
no.
do not use public Wi-Fi. It's ridiculous. I was actually at a hotel in Nevada, and I was like, "Where's the password?" And they're like, "Well, you're gonna have to talk to our IT people in order to get the password." I'm like, "I'm not using public Wi-Fi in this Nevada hotel connected to a casino. Like, this is not happening." So, I mean, I think being cautious, if you have a situation like that, use your own personal hotspot if you need to on your phone, something that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
secure. Make sure your personal hotspot has password protection. It's not just out there open. Don't name your Wi-Fi with your full name. I've seen that before. Somebody told me a prominent public official who shall remain nameless was on the plane with others, and his Wi-Fi was his full name. So, like, not a great plan. So, don't think just because you can get on Wi-Fi, it's safe. That is a criminal's, dream, is to have you on Wi-Fi that they've compromised and they can get access to your data. So that's I think a really, really important thing that people sort of are not cautious enough about, I would say, out there. All right, there's a question about what are the AI tools for individuals or companies to fight cyber crimes? Does anybody have any ideas about anything that's sort of out there yet? I'm not really aware of anything
It just depends on what you're
particular.
trying to stop. Like if you're trying to stop something that's email based, you may have to look for a tool that focuses on phishing emails. If you're looking for something that stops text messages, you may have to find a tool so there's no one catch-all tool. Like I've seen like the company like Know Before where they do the phishing emails to a lot of corporations. I've seen where there's various texting ones that are out there. I can't say I do one that's for sure going to catch everything. I haven't gotten to that point yet because AI is still very nuanced when it comes to actually preventing the cybercrimes. Because they're looking more so for behavior analytics. I've
Yeah.
seen AI be used a lot more towards investigating crimes or helping with investigations of crimes to kind of minimize the amount of data you have to go through. But it just depends on the type of tool. So like if you have phishing tools, like a phishing tool, that's good to have within your Outlook system or whatever system that you're utilizing. Um, but I like KnowBe4 was one. There was from one for anti-money laundering was I think it was Nice by Actimize, I think the company name is just BioCatch. There's a bunch of different companies out there that do have various tools. It just depends on what type of cybercrime you're trying, because cybercrime is an all-encompassing huge umbrella. What are you targeting? What are you trying to protect yourself from? So I wish I had a better answer for like the specific tools. If you send me an email or a message, I'll look those tools up. I'll do some researches. I think that was from Paula, to really see what we can do to help with that.
That's great. Yeah, and I know years ago the FTC had a competition and the company called No Mo Robo for robocalls actually won that and they came up with a product to help block sort of the robocalling thing. So I think there are definitely things that are out there, but I agree, sort of having the anti-fraud AI tools is a hope where a lot more companies are going to be going a lot sooner. Um, um, and then what third parties do you suggest to use to test security systems? I don't know if we have any thoughts on that.
I think I said it depends on what you're testing. Are you testing social engineering? Are you testing the physical system? Because there's pen testers that do that. And there's a lot of different pen testing teams out there. You would have to find a pen tester that you trust to be able to look at your data and be able to say, hey, you're vulnerable in these positions. Um, so I think that's what you have to look at. But if you look at data, pen testing, if you look at social engineering to test your actual employees, whether they would actually fall for a social engineering tactic or not, that's a different type of pen testing. So research pen testing and then find a company that you found that's reputable and that you can trust, and then I would go from there.
Great. I think our last question is, does a password manager work across all of your devices? How do I use it across some desktop, laptop, phone, iPad, etc.?
You would have to install the official app. So don't go to the official company, and you'd have to install the app on your web browser, your phone, your laptop, whatever device. I use a password manager. I have it installed on my laptop. I have it installed on my phone, um, and I have it installed on my desktop. And I can access it anywhere, but it's password protected. So it's only I can get into it. Actually, it's biometric. So you can't even get into it unless you have my biometrics. Um, but yeah, so you can do it across all different platforms. There's a few companies out there, but you would just download the official app and it stays locked until you unlock it, and then you can scroll through. You can look up what your password was. Sometimes they have autofill. If you want that part of it, you don't have to have autofill to put in, but definitely you can store a ton of passwords. And I can tell you right now, my entire cyber team, all of us use password managers. So I can tell you our passwords aren't normal. We have the most random, weird passwords you can think of that are crazy generated, 20 characters long when you can't get into them. So the longer the password, the better, and the more lowercase, uppercase, symbols, numbers, the more complicated, the better. So if you are going to do a password manager, do more than 8 characters. Try to do like 12 or 13 characters at least. I said mine are 20, so they're long.
As they should be. Mine too. Okay, well, I think we're at a bit past our time, so I just want to thank our panelists, Tracy and Mark, for a great presentation. I hope that the audience enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of good tips for people to go away with, and appreciate everybody's contributions. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
Bye.